Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary pals, today I'm correcting a mistake by presenting to you the first in a series of action games I really should have gotten around to playing sooner with the absolutely fantastic Bayonetta. Made by Platinum as one of 4 games they made in a publishing deal with Sega back in 2008, Bayonetta was created as a spiritual successor to Devil May Cry by its director Hideki Kamiya. While it's definitely a bit of a different beast compared to it, Bayonetta was just as good, with creative combat so well made that it hasn't aged a day, and its whole presentation, from its soundtrack to the action, was oozing with style. Then there's Bayonetta herself, who, for reasons we'll get more into later, was loved by basically everyone. This is a masterpiece of an action title so good and well made that I have no idea how or why I didn't get around to it sooner, but you know what? Better late than never. The story follows Bayonetta, an unborn witch who, to satisfy her demonic partners, fights angels for a living, and unfortunately lost her memories after a 500-year-long nap in a coffin. Her informant and, friend Enzo, however, notifies her of a large stone that went on sale at the black market in Vigrid that's similar to the one she has. So, in order to get her memories back, Bayonetta heads over to Vigrid and hopes she'll find answers for her past, all while beating down Paradiso's many angelic forces, and occasionally helping out these two little stragglers. Bayonetta's story is simple, kind of predictable, somehow weirdly hard to follow towards the end, and yet despite that, I still really liked it. Bayonetta's interactions with the cast were all great. Her constant teasing of Luca was always fun, and she had some pretty wholesome moments with this mysterious girl, Cereza. The biggest appeal for me was the spectacle of everything, though. A lot of combos end with Bayonetta summoning a giant demonic limb to hit enemies with, and she even has special attacks where, out of nowhere, she pulls out a weapon or a torture device to kill angels with. And in what's always my favorite moment in larger scale fights, she usually finishes off the enemy by doing a dance and by using her hair as a catalyst, summons a demon to deliver the final blow. It's over the top, anime as heck, and the greatest thing. Then we have Bayonetta herself, and let me tell ya, she's easily the second coolest female protagonist I've ever seen, and is a perfect example for how to make a sexualized character without upsetting people. Bayonetta just radiates confidence, both from her appearance and in her skills. She knows she looks good and totally owns it in every way she can. It's to a point where I don't know how someone could find fault with the fan service here. Then there's her confidence in battle, and let me tell you, this isn't a woman who thinks she's better than her enemies. She knows she's better than them, and is more than willing to flaunt that fact. Honestly, it doesn't even feel like she's really trying most of the time. Even in boss fights where she lets her hair down to use more of her power, it still feels like a cat toying with food. Like she knows they aren't a threat to her, so she's just going to enjoy it as much as possible. Bayonetta's just a really charming and awesome main lead who makes every scene she's in. But everyone who's played this will agree that the game's biggest strength is easily in its gameplay. Bayonetta as an action game is fairly challenging, and it's as rewarding as you want it to be. The basics of combat are simple and easy to learn, but beyond that, it's very difficult to master, and you will definitely die a good few times on your first run, especially if you're me, because wow, I am trash. Bayonetta has a chapter-based structure, with each one having a number of fights, or verses as they're called, for you to go through. In between each fight, you'll be exploring each area for materials to create items, should you need them, as well as extra halos, this game's currency, and even upgrades for your health and magic meter. But we'll talk a lot more about those things later. In combat, you fight with a combination of punches and kicks from the 4 different weapons on Bayonetta's hands and feet. Perform the right combo, and you can even trigger a special combo finisher or two called a Wicked Weave for heavy damage. Now, while I can't say I've mastered it, I love how combat feels. Every attack has a really nice punch to it, and Bayonetta's moveset feels really diverse and versatile, despite there only being 2 attack buttons. How you fight can change though as you find golden LPs throughout the game. See, these are angelic hymns that Rodan can use at his bar, the Gates of Hell, to lure out a demon he can forcefully and seemingly brutally mold into a new weapon. Because you can equip different weapons to your hands and feet, and they all affect the way you fight to some degree, this adds a lot of room for experimentation and creativity with how you tackle any chapter. Of the ones I used, my personal favorites had to be the Twin Claws Durga. I loved the versatility the fire and lightning modes had, with the former being slow but hard-hitting, and the latter having lower general damage but higher attack speed for faster combos. The tool in Bayonetta's arsenal that's just as important as her weapons though is easily Witch Time. More often than not, if you dodge an enemy's attack just before it hits, you'll trigger Witch Time and slow down everything around you for a brief period. This'll let you get more damage in without any risk of getting hit, and it also gives you a 50% boost for any combo points you earn while it's up. Out of everything, Witch Time definitely gave me the most trouble intentionally using because, just like my skills at this game, my reflexes are trash and comparable to that of a stoned snail. Honestly, I feel like more often than not I triggered it accidentally rather than purposefully. In my defense though, like I mentioned earlier, Bayonetta is a fairly challenging game. Enemies can hit fairly hard and have attacks that may be difficult to dodge, especially with angels like Grace and Glory, who hit hard and move a mile a minute. Thankfully though, on a casual run-through, if you're wanting some extra help, you have some items you can make or buy that can heal you, buff your damage, and so on and so forth. If you care about your rank though, none of that's an option. Yeah, similar to Devil May Cry, you get ranked at the end of each chapter, with pure platinum being the best award you can receive. You get graded based on how fast you completed the chapter, your total combo points, how much damage you took, and so on. Now, while I don't personally care too much about my ranking in games like this, I do love how much replayability it adds to each chapter. I can easily imagine how fun and rewarding it might be to master a level and manage to get a pure platinum award. With that being said though, you will get deducted points for using things like items and even dying, but it's also possible you can lose out on them by potentially missing one or more of that chapter's verses, like in chapter 12 where oddly like half the level is optional. Yeah, not every encounter is required, and if it's your first time going through the game, you'll definitely miss plenty of these thanks to Bayonetta's many, very well-hidden Alfheim portals. Each chapter will usually have about one or two of these, and they serve as special challenges that can be pretty difficult at points. Some aren't too bad, but a lot of them will really test your knowledge and skill with the game's mechanics. Heck, in some cases, if you're wanting the best rank possible, you'll have to wait until you get another one of the game's weapons for higher damage output, combo gain, and maybe even a better suited moveset. I tell you what, there were plenty that I didn't complete because I wasn't even remotely skilled enough, like with Chapter 5's first portal. That one requires you to beat 3 waves of enemies during Witch Time on a time limit, and I don't think I need to remind you about my ability to use that. Once beaten though, you'll get ranked for it, and you'll also be rewarded with either a broken witch heart or a broken moon pearl to eventually increase your health or magic gauge once you have enough of them. As a quick side note though, don't feel bad if you miss these first go around. Like I said before, they're very well hidden, to the point where I'm not too sure how people were expected to find some of these on their own. Now, with all that being said, while I love the combat in Bayonetta for how fun and satisfying it is and how easily replayable each of the chapters are, I do have some issues with the game beyond that. First off, let's talk about Bayonetta's torture attacks. When you fill up enough of your magic gauge, you can use one of these on most enemies for dealing a lot of damage and gaining a lot of combo points. In order to get maximum damage and points though, you'll need to completely fill up a gauge via button mashing, and this is where we get to the problem. Some of these are just obnoxiously difficult to max out. Like, you really gotta be hammering away at the button for a few of these. This can apply to Bayonetta's summons as well, and if I'm being honest, the constant rapid mashing I needed to do for a good score actually made my hand cramp up a bit after a little while. Secondly, I do not enjoy Bayonetta's QTEs. When these come up, failure usually means immediate death, and you don't have much time to react to them. Like if I had a 3 or 4 second period to respond, I wouldn't have a problem with this, but no, you have like a split second to react to these. And lastly, we have the game's 2 gimmick chapters, Route 666 and Isla del Sol. These have you riding on a motorcycle and piloting a missile, respectively, and while I did enjoy them, they definitely go on a few minutes too long. I also just don't like the missile's dodge in Isla del Sol. The fact that the whole screen spins when it happens makes the whole thing unnecessarily disorienting. Like, I could so easily see this making somebody dizzy or just plain motion sick. So I'm only one game into the Bayonetta series and already we're off to a fantastic start. The story certainly isn't perfect, but I enjoyed it for what it was. I really liked how charming the cast was, and the game's action was always a joy to see. Then there's Bayonetta herself, and while Samus will always be my personal #1 coolest female character, Bayonetta's a fantastic #2. I'm really looking forward to seeing more of her in 2 and 3. Its combat is incredibly fun and satisfying, and even if I'm not great at the game by any means, I can easily see all the depth in it. It's also very replayable thanks to its ranking system, so even if Bayonetta's short, you can easily get plenty of hours out of the game. From all the games by Platinum I've played so far, I still think Astral Chain is my personal favorite, but Bayonetta was great, and I'm excited to see how much better its sequel is. Until then, thank you all for watching, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, consider supporting me on Patreon or by becoming a member of the channel, and I hope you all have a nice day.